The question is that this House do now adjourn. Michael Fallon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to raise the issue tonight of secondary schooling in Sevenoaks. Parents in the northern part of my constituency, Madam Deputy Speaker, have a choice of the existing secondary schools in Swanley and Hextable. They have the choice of the Lee Technology Academy and the new Longfield Academy, as well as access to the Wilmington and Dartford grammar schools further north. All of those schools, I'm sure, looking forward to the package of reforms that's coming from the department, giving head teachers and their governors more freedom to decide for themselves the education that they deliver. So I want to focus tonight on the Sevenoaks area itself, and I think it's particularly appropriate to do so in the week that the new Knoll Academy opens its doors for the first time. There's always something exciting about the launch of a new educational venture and the promise that it holds out for a whole new generation of pupils. And I know the Minister will want to join me in wishing the new academy well under the leadership of its principal, Mary Boyle. It's also right to pay tribute to the enormous personal contribution made by the lead sponsor, Gordon Phillips, and to the commitment and hard work of Mike Bolton and his team from Sevenoaks School, the co-sponsors, as well as the support from Kent County Council. The Knoll Academy, Madam Deputy Speaker, replaces two previous single-sex schools, the Bradbourne School for girls and the Wilderness School for boys. And the replacement of these two schools has involved much discussion and consultation over the last couple of years, not least with parents who initially, of course, supported single-sex schooling. But one of the major reasons why those parents were in the end won over to the concept of a new academy was, of course, the promise of a new building. The Bradbourne site was already inadequate, even for the girls' school that was sited there. It became too small. The Wilderness site consists of a series of buildings, some of which are over 60 years old. In fact, Wilderness School first opened its doors 60 years ago this very month, and certainly are well past their fit date and need renewing. Operating the new academy, supposing and aims to coalesce two previous schools, is obviously much more difficult on two separate sites well over a mile apart. Operating on two sites adds considerably to the costs involved and the management issues involving the duplication of a whole series of functions that simply would be unnecessary once the school is on a single site. It's also difficult for the new management team, educationally I suspect, to build very quickly the new ethos and purpose that they're seeking for a single all-ability co-educational school while the site is still split into two halves. The new building was originally promised for 2012, and I must press my honourable friend on how much longer it will now be delayed. We need to bear in mind that the launch of the academy has already been delayed by around a year later than was originally envisaged, nothing to do with his own responsibility, but by the long delay in getting the revenue funding agreement signed by ministers in the previous government. What will give parents real confidence is a commitment from this government to the principle of a new building and some indication of the likely timetable involved. This is a matter I have pressed a number of times with the Secretary of State, and as my honourable friend knows, I have written on this subject to his colleague, Lord Hill, And I do hope that he would agree with me that parents are now entitled to some firmer indication of when a new building will be started and when they are likely to be able to move on to a single site. Finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is one adjacent issue that I do want to raise tonight. There are a significant number of children in Sevenoaks who, despite the arrival of the new All Ability Academy, will continue to choose the grammar school route that is offered by the selective system in Kent. And it's right that they continue to have that choice. In recent years, that choice has become more restricted owing to the pressure on grammar school places across West Kent, and we face an increasing birth rate and the development of some significant new housing. It can't be right for those children in Sevenoaks who do succeed in passing the 11 plus, that they are then allocated grammar school places as far away as Folkestone or Ashford, or indeed allocated places at non-selective schools, or are simply told to continue to fight for a grammar school place through the tortuous process of waiting lists and appeals. And that is especially unfair when so many places, over 300, are given by Kent schools to out-of-county applicants. Now, these are currently matters for the adjudicator, who is considering a number of appeals to the existing admissions schemes, and I would not expect the Minister to comment in any detail on that. I'm sure he would, though, sympathise with my view that those grammar schools that do recruit in some numbers from outside the county, as they are entitled to do need to remember that they are Kent schools, paid for and supported by Kent council taxpayers and supported by parents who have chosen to live under a selective system. But my main purpose tonight is to mark the launch of the new Noel Academy, to wish it well, a first new secondary school in Sevenoaks for a generation, and to ask the government, in the shape of the Minister of State who's present tonight, to make that commitment also to the new building that is desperately needed if the academy is to be a success.
Before my honourable friend sits down,
of course.
I'm most grateful to my honourable friend. My honourable friend has made a very powerful case for the funding for the new Noel Academy. He will be aware that the secondary schools in Sevenoaks, including the Noel Academy, are a major source of secondary education for my constituents in Edenbridge, which sadly lost its secondary school some years ago. And I want to say to my honourable friend on the front bench that I support most warmly and strongly the case that my honourable friend, the member for Sevenoaks, has made for the funding of the Noel Academy, which will be of great benefit not only to my honourable friend's constituents in Sevenoaks, but also to my constituents in the Edenbridge area.
I'm most grateful to my right honourable friend, and he reminds me, of course, that the new academy expects to draw from a wider area than my constituency, indeed from right across West Kent, as indeed the Bradbourne School for Girls did before it was merged into the academy. But the point I'm making, and I will not labour further, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that for the academy to be a success in the short and medium and longer term, it does need to be established in modern, fit-for-purpose buildings on a single site rather than spread across the two sites of the two previous schools. And on that, I hope my honourable friend will now be able to give me some comfort.
Gibb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I should like to start by congratulating my honourable friend, member for Sevenoaks, on securing this debate. As a former education minister, he has a passion for raising standards in our schools and ensuring that good schools have the autonomy and professional freedoms to deliver high-quality education. He himself was instrumental in the reforms that led to local management of schools, a seminal education reform that has resulted in huge benefits to schools, and I hesitate to say this, over the last 20 years. It's the coalition government's ambition to raise academic standards in our schools, particularly for children from poorer backgrounds. Education is the main route to social mobility and closing the attainment gap between those from the wealthiest and poorest backgrounds is a key objective of this government. The Academies Act will enable us to expand the Academies programme with 100 new academies opening over the last 2 weeks. The Act also enables primary and special schools to become academies and enjoy the freedoms that academy status brings. And my honourable friend is right to pay tribute to the Noel Academy, which is also one of those new academies opening this week. We're currently looking at the national curriculum with a view to restoring it to its original purpose, a core entitlement built around subject disciplines, and we are empowering parents, teachers and other educational institutions to establish free schools so that parents have a genuine choice for their children. School buildings, of course, need continuing investment, but it's vital that that future spending represents the best possible value for the taxpayer. Building Schools for the Future was a flagship programme of the previous government, set up for the purpose of rebuilding or refurbishing every secondary school in the country by 2023. Indeed, there have been some very impressive new buildings built, and it must be true that a good working environment can only help academic achievement and improve behaviour. But the BSF programme was not the most cost-effective way to deliver new school buildings. Rebuilding a school under BSF was 3 times more expensive than constructing a commercial building and twice as expensive as building a school in Ireland. And during the 5 years of the BSF programme, out of 3,500 secondary schools, just 211 schools have benefited and only 112 have been completely rebuilt. The budget rose from 45 billion to 55 billion for a variety of reasons, and the timescale from 10 years to 18 years. Now, of the £250 million spent before building began, 60 million was spent on consultants or advisory fees. In effect, BSF became hugely bureaucratic, with process within process, cost upon cost, and represented poor value for money. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, nobody comes into politics to cut public spending, but the government is faced with a £156 billion deficit, the largest deficit amongst the G20 countries, and it's our responsibility, difficult as it may be, to sort out the mess that we have inherited, and failure to do so, as my honourable friend knows, would put our economic recovery in jeopardy. And whilst we announce that the BSF programme is ending, this does not mean the end of capital spending on schools. And I know that my honourable friend is a tireless advocate for educational excellence in his constituency, and that the question of the future funding of the Noel Academy is one which he has invested a great deal of energy. The Noel Academy, which opened this month, was formed, as he has mentioned, by the merger of the Bradbourne School and the Wilderness School. And the Academy is sponsored by Gordon Phillips, chairman of the Glencare Group, and co-sponsored by Sevenoaks School and by Kent County Council, and it specialises in languages. And everyone is very optimistic that the Academy will increase opportunities for young people in the Sevenoaks area. And I would like to add my thanks to those of my honourable friend, to all those who put in so much work to deliver this Academy opening on time this September. Now, the Academy, as my honourable friend has said, is based in the existing premises of Bradbourne and Wilderness, which means that it's currently operating on a split site. Something I know from experience in my own constituency is far from being a satisfactory arrangement, with pupils and teachers having to travel between the two sites. And in my own experience, there's not a mile between them, but far less, and I know how inconvenient that is. And if it's as far as a mile, that must be hugely inconvenient and time-consuming. As he said, the proposed new school building will be based on just one of the sites, the Wilderness site, and it was hoped that the new school building would be ready by 2012-13. And I share with my honourable friend a belief in the importance of high-quality school buildings. But while it's undoubtedly true that a school's primary assets are its teaching and support staff and its educational ethos, it's equally true that it's vital to give children and teachers a well-maintained working environment. And given the natural depredations of the climate and the wear and tear suffered by any building used by hundreds of people on a daily basis, that does mean constant investment in our school infrastructure. So I'm extremely sympathetic to my honourable friend, and indeed to all honourable members who have schools in their constituencies that are in need of rebuilding or repair. But the inefficiency of the way the BSF was structured and the parlour state of the public finances meant that my right honourable friend had no choice but to suspend the BSF programme and announce an urgent review of schools' capital spending. And in determining which projects would go ahead and which would cease, the government developed a single set of criteria and applied it nationally. Projects that would continue would be those which were part of their area's initial BSF schemes and had reached financial close, the so-called sample projects, which were part of their area's initial BSF schemes where financial close had not been reached, but where a preferred bidder had been appointed at close of dialogue, and some planned school projects in addition to a local authority's initial scheme, projects with outline business cases approved before the 1st of January this year. As part of the BSF announcement, the planned new build for the Noel Academy was put on hold pending completion of the capital review. The Noel project was in the feasibility stage at the time that it was paused. An outline business case had not at that point been approved. And as my honourable friend knows, capital builds were put on hold for 5 other academies in Kent in addition to Noel. But capital was allocated for 2 schools in Kent, the Isle of Sheppey Academy and the Skinners Academy. The Secretary of State announced a complete review of how capital will be allocated and spent in improving the fabric of school buildings. The review, now underway, led by Sebastian James, will look at how best to meet parental demand, make design and procurement cost-effective and efficient, and overhaul the allocation and targeting of capital. And over the next few months, officials will work with all 75 projects that are for decision after the spending review to discuss their capital needs. And those decisions will focus on the most appropriate and cost-effective way to deliver the sponsor's educational vision. And in the case of the Noel Academy, this will include a site visit involving Partnership for Schools, the Department for Education, the Young People's Learning Agency, as well as Kent County Council and the Academy Trust. And we hope to be able to make final decisions on capital allocations towards the latter part of this year. And I would like to assure my honourable friend that the Department for Education will continue to make capital allocations on the basis of need, in particular based on the level of dilapidation of the building and on issues such as the levels of deprivation. And that his representations today and in recent weeks will be taken seriously by the Capital Review team. But I'm sure he'll understand that I'm unable to make any commitments today on these issues until the review has completed its work. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I pay tribute to my honourable friend, to his energy and tireless work in promoting the case for the rebuilding of the Noel Academy. He makes a compelling case on behalf of his constituents, which I have taken on board. And I hope my honourable friend will, in some measure, be reassured by my promise that all future decisions on capital spending will be made in a transparent, straightforward, and above all fair way, which puts the needs of children and parents first. In today's economic climate, we have a particular duty to ensure that we continue to invest where investment is needed to get the best possible value for taxpayers' money and to achieve a right balance between spending and other means of school improvement. Change will not just be delivered with spending decisions, but by creating a system that places more trust in the professionals working within it. The government believes that head teachers should have more control over how money is spent. We believe that teachers should have more autonomy over how they teach their students, and we believe that parents should have a real choice about which schools to send their children to. Future spending must support those aims, and it must ensure that money is directed to those who need it most.